Hey everybody, Jaycie here with Cartwheels and Banana Peels. And what I'm sharing with you today is some snippets and some really, I would say the highlights, some of them, from a hot seat session that I got to do with Louisa Hext. So I'm going to share some of those. One of the first ones that I'm going to be sharing with you is me expressing the difference between a brand story and an origin story. We were discussing whether or not she wanted to focus on the brand story or the origin story for her hot seat session. Now, we're going to be working together. I'm excited about that. She's talked about that. But she had some great ahas during our session. So let's jump in, and then I'll kind of point some things out here. Having fun. We are into season 2 of Cartwheels and Banana Peels. So there's a couple things going on in season 2, by the way. Hot seat sessions, going to be sharing some of those, obviously. And then for all of October, it is going to be ghost stories. Oh my gosh, I've got some really cool people starting to line up. And they're all alive, by the way. Be interesting if we, anywho, let's dive into Louisa's, because this was such a fun episode. With a brand story is really going to express what we stand for, right? Mm-hmm. It gives our personality, it gives our company's personality. And when we're a small business and we work one-on-one or even one-to-many, the brand of the company is still us. It's still our personal brand, really. Mm-hmm. So it's what we stand for. It is that aspect of things. Whereas the origin story is, well, why did you start doing this? Mm-hmm. Right? What made you go this direction? And in your case, focus on forgiveness. So there's that aspect. Now, for others, they might be that struggle to success story or triumph story. That one is, well, what challenge did you overcome? How did you get where you are today, right? Any of those can be a little bit of a dime a dozen if we're not careful. So we really have to shine a light on our personalities and what we take a stand for, or for those that want to know why we're doing what we're doing, so that we can relate to them. That's okay. Like super, super key. So what are your thoughts on that? Where do you want to go today?
Well, interestingly enough, I could go in either direction. However, I think the brand story, I could talk about the origin story if there was an opportunity for some kind of hybrid thing as it relates to the perfect client, because I walk the walk. I'm not a coach. Despite studying forgiveness for over 12 years, I have lived and breathed the journey without the destination, the forgiveness, the unforgiveness, and how I've been impacted by people and systems in my life and myself. Yeah, I think the brand story for today, because it possibly is a less courageous direction, and because you're recording.
Sometimes the things that we share are not to be, they are to be done privately with the client, right? They're not always, some of the deep stuff isn't always meant to be out in the world. This is true. I totally agree.
So I think the brand story,
okay, so there's a couple of things that are super important for your elevator pitch, let alone your brand story, because your elevator pitch is a tiny brand story. You have to know who your client is. And we deep dive into that, right? Any business coaching you've done, I guarantee you've gone through that process. Who's your ideal client, your target market, your client avatar, you name it, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. But it's really true, and we have to really deep dive into that, okay? So I was talking to Louisa about that, and one of the ways during this hot seat session that she was finding out who her client is to figure out who her client is not. So let's take a listen into that, okay?
That's not the market. Somebody that's gone through a horrible divorce, for example, someone who is experiencing abuse from a family member or a significant other. It's not something that I would be saying, hey, that's my perfect client. Let's just get them to forgive. I mean, it's probably the most inappropriate thing to do. Yet there is a
Right.
time, and this is what distinguishes me, and I want to distinguish my brand. Curious, because I've never thought about the branding in this way. I know what I don't do, and it is about my brand. It's not radical forgiveness work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not faith-based spiritual work. It's personal work, and it takes time, and it's hard, and there's a journey without a destination. One day we may forgive, and the next day we may unforgive all over again, and we're back to square one. And the next day we're launching into the future and feeling the lightest that we've ever felt in years and years. So the brand is, this is an opportunity to dip your toe into the water of the experience. It's actually people that are at the front end of their journey, and they're ready. So they know they're ready. I'm not seeking an audience to figure out if they're ready. These women know they're ready.
This is good. Okay, so things that I want to, when my goodness, when we dive into the brand story, when clients work with me, we dig into a lot. It's not just figuring out how to tell a story. It's so much more than that. It's a lot of deep work. And during the hot seat with Louisa, mind you, the work that she does is about forgiveness. It's very, very deep work. I'm actually working on mine with her. She's phenomenal. Oh my gosh, this woman got stuff out of me I haven't told anybody. Anyway, so amazing. She holds a beautiful safe container. Okay. But when we do really deep work like that, sometimes it can feel challenging. It's not easy. It's not fluffy bunnies and rainbows. It's not always like, so much fun, right? I carry this big personality and I'm so vivacious. But we often can dive in, even in storytelling, we of course dive into the deeper stuff. And I have another hot seat coming up shortly that I'll share with you that is really deep. And how do we do that in a way that comes across, I say entertaining in a very light way, but it connects, it grabs attention. It's not so heavy that you just almost can't stand to listen or tell it over and over. But Louisa had a funny take on questioning why she does what she does. Mind you, when we're talking about your brand story, you do have to know why you do what you do, because it's at the core of your brand. So anyways, check this out, because she definitely got a giggle out of me. Anytime we're in that position, or the other work that you've done, especially when we're empathic, we take on their emotions, we feel them. And when we're guiding them and walking through that journey with them and supporting them in that way, then we have to be courageous and bold too.
Yeah, I mean, I could sell coffee. I'm a barista. It would be much more fun and get a paycheck that way. You know, making pretty coffee.
Yeah.
You know, with hearts on it, and you know, I ask myself, why do I do this? Why do I not do something that
because you're called, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you.
Okay. So when you're working on a brand story, which is so important, we've already talked about how you have to know who it is that you really want to connect with and work with. Who is this for? So that you are speaking their language. You're giving them the right energy, the right vibration. You're connecting with them. But you have to know why you do it? What is at the core of this for you? So that goes back to your personal origin story. Now, here's the deal. I'm a huge advocate of not ever telling the origin story first. Origin stories are interesting, and we often do want to hear more about them, but it should never be the first thing, right? I have videos out there on that. Not going to get into it here, but we dove in a little bit more with Louisa in regards to finding that and diving in a little bit to the origin story, or talking about it at the very least. So I can hardly wait to continue working with her and putting her brand story together and developing it, because you guys are getting, well, not because, but you guys are getting to see those initial pieces, those initial aha moments as she sat in the hot seat. So I'm really excited about all of that. And I already said it, I know, but she's phenomenal. And I know her story, and that will come out. You'll be able to learn those things, especially when her origin story is shared, things like that. But this is about her right now and shining a bright light on her, and you recognizing in that, like, oh, if you did this work, then you will be able to take a deeper dive to figure out these pieces and really understand how to put a brand story together. Because you have to connect, but it has to have a level of captivation. You've got to have an entertainment level to it, whether it's ha-ha funny or really deep, because you have to connect with your people. Anyways, I'm gonna shut up. I want to play more of this with you. So here we go. That you can share in this little tiny edge of it, the origins of why you do what you do. But it's not necessarily your origin story. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Okay. So it's just because, again, the brand story is short and sweet, but it's also, there's a narrative to it, right? It is a story. So you want to share that aspect. What is it about you that maybe and for you, maybe in that sense, it really, as I sit here and I talk through it myself, this is how I work. But because I'm ADHD and I process out loud. So it goes back even to the story of the little girl and feeling such, what's the word I want there, but feeling compelled anyway, to make sure she felt heard, supported, even though she was a little bit older than you. So as we wrapped up the hot seat session, of course, I asked Louisa, how'd she feel about it? What'd she get out of it in that session? What really stood out to her? And I was so excited to hear her say it was phenomenal. You'll hear it. I've got it. I'm going to share that with you in a moment. And then the question, of course, as you'll also hear her say, comes up. It's like, well, we've bullet pointed during the hot seat session. What do we do now? What do I do with it? How do I put it all together? That's what I'm here for. Because that, of course, is something that I'm very skillful at and I love to do. So as you'll see in any of these hot seat session episodes that you watch, it takes a combined effort. It takes the client and me, in this particular instance, the coach, to come together, collaborate, make it happen. Okay. I pull things out. I see things. Don't do this, do this. But then what makes the most sense to you or the client, right? So how does it fit? How does it feel good? Because it has to feel good to you. So we're going to wrap this one up. I want you to hear what she has to say. And as I said, I know I'm only sharing and being open that she and I are working together on both sides as a client. We're both clients for each other because she's been publicly open that we're working on the brand story. Otherwise, I wouldn't do that because, hey, side note, there's ethics involved. So, you can't run around doing that. But I've seen her talk about it in Facebook groups and stuff even. So I know she's cool with it. But this is a very profound experience. Discovering your stories, any of them, and being able to put them together and tell them in a way that has an impact on other people, captures attention, makes you stand out over the noise of everybody else, is just like fire. It's fire. It's amazing. It'll give you confidence. You can go do interviews. You can go do different presentations. You can be live on camera, whatever the case may be. It gives you confidence, let alone all the obvious things that you might think it does. Anyway, listen to what Louisa had to say. And other than that, I'm going to be wrapping up. So yeah, you guys are rock stars yourselves. Please know that. If you don't think your story is important, or if you don't know how to tell it, you don't even know what it is, well, then obviously we need to work together. But anywho, what did you get today? What stood out to you? How are you feeling? I mean, these are just some kind of bullet pointed ideas that sure we could put all together and work on a brand story, but
I think it's phenomenal.
You like it? Just things stood out for you?
I'll tell you why. Yeah, you know, I know the things that I've shared many times in different ways. I have a very hard time putting on paper my story. So without a person that I can verbally express to, I'm an external processor. It's recorded. The challenge is, what do I do with it? Like, what's the next step? How do I use?
So these hot seat sessions have been a blast to record for you guys and to share them. Obviously, I enjoy working with my clients, and the ahas and the profound moments are mind-blowing, not just for me, but for them, or however you want to say it. You could flip that. Super, super amazing. I always say as well that knowing your story and then being able to tell it are actually two different things. So we can work on what your stories are, is, whichever, but then how do you tell it? Where do you tell it? When do you tell it? Why do you tell it? And when it comes to the how, it's the body language, it's the voice, it's the inflections of your voice, it's the pacing, the whole schnizzle. It's all of it, because it is really important and makes a really big difference. Okay. But for right now, I'm out of here. Get ready for some more hot seat sessions coming up. Definitely check those out. And if you're like, well, how do I work with you? There are a couple of different ways. So I do have a group program I'm getting ready to release. It's crazy affordable. It's ridiculous. And I have my reasons for that, because I'm tired of everybody going, I can't afford, because it's, 5 and up, just huge high ticket offers. I'm like, we don't always need to do that. So anyways, there are group things and there is one-on-one. So I do have both things going on, that I make myself available in those ways. And I'm making sure that I have something super affordable, so that those of you that are just actually rock stars, but just for whatever reason haven't been able to invest in 5 figures and above, or even 4 figures in some sort of coaching, but need to get your story and other stories put together so that you can get them out there and actually make a difference. Because whatever it is that you do, you're called to do that. There's a reason for it. If you're really feeling it, you're feeling the fire in your belly, you just feel it in your bones, it's because you need to get it out there. There are people that need your stories. They need what it is that you do. So you have to stand out to be able to reach them. Anywho, I'm out of here for today, but we will catch you next time at Car Wheels and Banana Peels.